Nothing in this workshop is designed to supersede the rules, public notices, and official documents. And all of the examples and slides with stations and that sort of thing on them are hypothetical, and we're not using real data. So the first thing I'm going to do today is review what Gary already briefly mentioned, the preview period, the mock auction, and the bidding schedule. As you are hopefully aware by now, the preview period opened yesterday. It closes today at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. We encourage you to log in if you have at least one station that was qualified to participate in the final confidential status letter. You'll be able to see for that station the results of the initial commitment and information pertaining to round 1 of the clock phase. If you haven't already logged in, please do so after the workshop. And in particular, the reason you'll want to do that is once the preview window closes today at 6 Eastern Time, you won't be able to access that information again until we open the bidding system on May 31st. As Gary also mentioned, the last piece of the bidder education puzzle is the mock auction. It starts tomorrow, May 25th, 2016. The mock auction is voluntary, but we strongly encourage you to participate. This is your opportunity to get your hands on the bidding system and try it out and test it out and see how it works before the actual bidding starts. The stations and prices that you will see when you log into the mock auction that have been assigned to you are hypothetical. But the variety and number of stations that we've assigned to each bidder for their mock auction is similar to what they will have in the actual auction. Likewise, regardless of what your status was, if you logged into the preview period for your real station, everyone will have the opportunity to bid in the mock auction. And just like in the regular auction, if you don't place a bid for one of these stations in any round, including the first round, the auction system will treat a missing bid as a bid to drop out of the auction, which means that if your stations in the mock auction drop out, you won't be able to bid on anything anymore. So if you do want to participate, please make sure you log in and place bids. The schedule for the mock auction is on the screen now. There will be 2 rounds tomorrow and 3 rounds on May 26th. Remember, again, the schedule is always in Eastern Time. And the login process and the URL for accessing the mock auction were provided in the final confidential status letter. The login process is the same as for making an initial commitment. And access to the system begins tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Eastern Time. The first round of bidding begins at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. You may bid either electronically or telephonically, and please feel free to call the bidder hotline number that was provided in the confidential status letter. We have a great team of staff standing by, ready to answer any questions that you may have as you are playing with the system and seeing the results of your mock auction. Finally, the clock phase actually starts next Tuesday, May 31st. There will be only 1 round that day and 1 round on June 1st. However, beginning on June 2nd and continuing until further notice, every single weekday that is not a federal holiday, there will be 2 rounds, 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. Eastern Time and 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern Time. Remember that the FCC may adjust the length of the rounds or the number of rounds depending on the reverse auction's progress. If the schedule changes, there will be an announcement in the bidding system during the auction, so be sure to pay attention to the auction schedule. I'm now going to go over some of the highlights of the bidding procedures. Detailed information about these procedures can be found in the bidding procedures public notice. Also, the tutorial that we put out this last week is an excellent resource. And so before we get into the actual system, we're going to go over some of these highlights. Bidding statuses, currently held option, vacancy index, price offers, and proxy bidding. This is a place for me to remind you about the high points of these procedures and for you all to ask questions later in this process. First, the bidding statuses. Inside the auction system, for each station that you have that was deemed qualified to participate in the clock phase, the station will have a bidding status. The bidding status is your guide to what you need to do for that station during the next round, for the remainder of the stage, or potentially for the rest of the auction, depending on what the station's status is. This chart displays the possible bidding statuses in Stage 1. If there is a subsequent stage to the auction, there are 2 other statuses that you could see in the system, but we're not going to go over those right now. So first thing first, this is a clock auction. It is made up of discrete bidding rounds. So first and foremost, if you see the status bidding listed next to one of your stations, it is imperative that you place a bid for that station in the next round if you want that station to remain in the auction. If you do not place a bid for that station, if a bid is not placed for that station that has the status bidding, the auction system will treat that missing bid as a bid to drop out. Remember, you can place bids manually, or if you have proxy instructions that are still in effect, the auction system will place the bid for you according to those instructions. But if it says bidding, you must place a bid if you want the station to stay in the auction longer. Second, if your station has the status frozen, provisionally winning, that means that you are a provisional winner for that station, and you will not need to bid again for the remainder of the stage. So why only provisionally winning? Well, you don't become a winning bidder unless this is the final stage of the auction. Remember, a stage consists of one reverse auction and one forward auction, which is run after the reverse auction of a stage concludes. Each stage attempts to clear a particular amount of spectrum to meet a particular clearing target, and if the forward auction does not generate enough proceeds to meet the final stage rule of the auction, then the auction will proceed to another stage, and your station's status could change back to bidding because bidding will resume in the reverse auction in a new stage. And we'll talk briefly about subsequent stages again later in this presentation. Third, for VHF stations only, if you're bidding for a UHF station, you should feel free to tune out for just a second. If there's a status called frozen, currently infeasible, what this means is that for the time being, a VHF station that sees this status does not need to bid in the stage because it is actually frozen. However, a station with this status could potentially need to bid again in the current stage of the auction, so its status could change to bidding. Likewise, its status could also change to frozen provisionally winning, in which case it wouldn't need to bid for the remainder of the stage. But in this particular instance, if you see frozen currently infeasible, be aware that you may need to bid again in the current stage. And finally, if the station has a status of exited, either exited voluntarily or exited not needed, be advised this means that the station will no longer bid in any stage of the auction in any round of the auction. The status indicates that the station is no longer in the auction and that it will be assigned a channel in its pre-auction band at the conclusion of the auction. Each of your qualified stations will have a bidding status, as we just discussed. But stations with the status of bidding or frozen will have a currently held option. Stations that have exited aren't bidding to relinquish spectrum anymore, so they don't have a currently held option. The currently held option is the relinquishment option a station is assigned to after bids from the previous round are processed. And if you've already logged into the preview period, the currently held option going into round 1 is referred to on the screen as the initial option. The important thing to understand about a station's currently held option is that once you place a bid for an option and the auction system accommodates the station in that option, meaning that that option becomes the station's currently held option, this means that the auction system will always be able to make sure that it is able to accommodate the station in that option. So what do I mean by accommodate the station? I mean that as a factual matter, the auction system has determined that it is possible to assign the station to that option. For instance, if you placed a bid for a station to move into the low VHF band, and the auction system assigns the low VHF option to your station as its currently held option, this means that the auction system found a feasible channel for that station in the low VHF band, and going forward, it will make sure that there is a feasible channel in that band for that station until you take an action that could change your currently held option or you become not needed. Whether or not you need to continue to bid for a currently held option is driven by your bidding status. Remember, unless a station status is frozen provisionally winning, the auction system has not yet determined whether or not it will need to purchase that station to meet the clearing target. Therefore, you may need to continue to bid on your currently held option to stay in the auction. Your station's currently held option will change if you bid to switch to a new relinquishment option, and that is processed by the system, in which case your currently held option becomes the relinquishment option that you placed a bid for. It can also change if you place a bid to drop out of the auction, and that is processed. In that case, you will drop out and be assigned to a channel in your pre-auction band at the conclusion of the auction, so you will no longer have a currently held option. And if during bid processing the auction system determines that your station is no longer needed in the auction, you will also no longer have a currently held option because you will exit the auction. So now I'm going to get into the details of the vacancy index. So you have seen now, hopefully if you've already logged in, your stations have a bidding status. They may have a currently held option if they're bidding or frozen currently infeasible or frozen provisionally winning. But you will also see for stations that have the status of bidding or frozen currently infeasible, vacancy information. The next few slides provide an explanation of what a vacancy index is, which bands you will see vacancy ranges for, how to interpret vacancy ranges, and we will go over a few examples. So first, what is a vacancy index? For each station, the vacancy index is an average number of weighted channels available in a specific band in that station's neighborhood, given the currently held options of all stations. The auction system uses each station's volume to weight the number of available channels available to it, and then averages those weighted results for all stations in the station's neighborhood. So the vacancy index is a weighted average of the number of available stations. A station's neighborhood includes all the stations that could interfere with the station in that band and thus potentially limit assigning that station to an available channel in that band. So the neighborhood is very specific to your station in that particular band that you're looking at. It's not as broad as DMA. It's very specific. When the FCC set the rules for calculating a vacancy index, the minimum possible value of the vacancy index is 0.5. And the highest possible value of the vacancy index is the number of available channels in the band. So for low VHF, that would be 5 channels because the low VHF band is comprised of channels 2 to 6. The maximum number for the high VHF band is 7 because that band is made up of channels 7 to 13. For the UHF band, the maximum number of channels is based on the clearing target. At a clearing target of 126 megahertz, the highest physical channel in the broadcast band is channel 29. Therefore, the highest possible number in the UHF band at the start of the auction will be 16, right? Channels 14 to 29. And you might be wondering how you can have 0.5 of a channel. Remember, the index is a weighted average of the number of available channels in a neighborhood, so it may be a decimal value. And you will not actually see the vacancy index. What you see in the auction system is a range. The vacancy index is calculated for your station falls somewhere within the range that you see on the screen. And now we're going to talk about for which bands you would see a range. For each station with the status bidding or frozen currently infeasible, vacancy ranges are displayed for the station's pre-auction band and for every band associated with an available relinquishment option for that station in the next round. excluding the currently held option. Vacancy range is not provided for the station's currently held option because, as we already discussed, the auction system has already determined that the station can be accommodated in its currently held option, and it will continue to ensure that the station can remain will be accommodated in that option. And additionally, remember, you will never see vacancy information for go off air because there is no vacancy. It has unlimited capacity. Now we're going to talk a little bit how to interpret these ranges. What are they used for? The vacancy range will give you a rough indication of how free the band is for a station as of the time of calculation. So you can sort of get a sense of, is there low vacancy, meaning that the band is very full, or is there a high amount of vacancy, meaning there are lots of available channels still? The lower the values are in the range, the fewer the number of available channels in that particular band. The lower the values are in the station's pre-auction band, it indicates that there are fewer available channels remaining in that band, so there is a higher potential that the station may become frozen. A station's pre-auction band fills up as other stations drop out of the auction, and for VHF stations, the pre-auction band can also fill up as UHF stations are assigned to channels in the VHF band. Additionally, lower values in bands other than the station's pre-auction band also indicate that there are fewer available channels in that band, which can mean, for instance, that if you want to place a bid to switch from your station's currently held option into a different band, the lower values for that band's vacancy range indicate a lower likelihood that the station will be able to switch into that band in the next round because there are fewer vacant or available channels. This is important. As I've described how to interpret these vacancy ranges, I've used phrases like higher potential and lower likelihood. The thing to remember about the vacancy range is that it provides you with a range of the weighted average number of available channels in a band for your station after bid processing from the previous round. However, we don't know what's going to happen in the upcoming round, so the bids of other bidders in the next round may change the likelihood that a station will be able to switch into a new band, or the likelihood that the station will still have a feasible channel in its pre-auction band. You will see predefined ranges in the station's pre-auction band. The FCC actually set particular ranges, so these are the ranges that you'll see in the system for your pre-auction band. For a UHF station, the ranges are 0.5 to 3, 3 to 6, and assuming a clearing target of 126 megahertz, 6 to 16. High VHF stations are 0.5 to 2, 2 to 4, and 4 to 7, and low VHF stations are 0.5 to 2, 2 to 4, and 4 to 5. For any other relevant bands to your station, the vacancy ranges that you see are not predefined. So this means you will likely see decimal values in those ranges, but interpreting them remains the same. The vacancy index for that station in that band that you're looking at falls somewhere within the range that you see. The minimum number of the range is still 0.5, the maximum number is still the number of channels in the band, and the lower the number, the more full the band. So let's look at a couple examples. On the screen, we're looking at the vacancy information for WBOB there at the top. And remember, this is examples for illustrative purposes only. It does not represent real data. WBOB is a UHF station, and you can see that its vacancy range for drop out of bidding to UHF or drop out to UHF is listed as 6.0 to 16. This is one of those predefined ranges because this is the station's pre-auction band. It is also the highest range of the three defined ranges, meaning that there are a greater number of available channels in the UHF band than if it saw one of the other two possible predefined ranges. The vacancy index for this station in the UHF band indicates that a weighted average between 6 and 16 channels are available in the UHF band for this station. Continuing to look at WBOB, we can see that its initial vacancy range for a move to high VHF option is 0.5 to 1.4. Remember, the high VHF band has a maximum of 7 channels. The minimum value is 0.5. Therefore, after the initial commitments were processed, the vacancy of the station's high VHF neighborhood here is very low. This means that there are probably not very many available channels for the station in the high VHF band. We can also see that its initial vacancy range for a move to low VHF is 0.7 to 2.1. Again, the lowest number is 0.5, and for the low VHF band, it has a maximum of 5 channels. So this range indicates that the vacancy in the low VHF band is also relatively low. Again, there may not be very many available channels for this station in that band. Now that we've reviewed the vacancy information that will be available to you in the auction, I'm going to briefly review price offers. I reiterate that this will be brief. If you want more detailed information on price offers, please refer to the public notices and online tutorial. But the reverse auction is a descending clock auction. Therefore, this means that there is a base clock, which in this auction is $900. Each round, the base clock is reduced by the larger of 5% of the current base clock price or 1% of the $900 opening price. For a UHF station bidding to go off air, again, UHF station bidding to go off air, the price offer will be equal to the base clock multiplied by that station's volume. If you don't know your station's volume, you can find that information easily on the Station Info tab of the auction system. However, in addition to the base clock price, among other things, when calculating the price offers for VHF stations or for UHF stations wanting to move into the VHF bands, the auction system takes into account the vacancy of the VHF band. Why? Well, ideally, the auction system would like to utilize all of the bands. So, for instance, if there are a lot of available channels in the VHF bands, the auction system may potentially lower prices to move into those bands at a slower rate in order to incentivize stations to actually move into those bands. The point here is simply that the decrement percentage for the VHF bands may vary greatly from round to round based on the relative availability of channels in the VHF bands. And this may be important for you to know if you have a UHF station and are intending to bid to move into those options or if you're bidding for a VHF stations. One of the reasons that this may matter to you is if you want to use proxy bidding, which I will talk about now. A proxy instruction can be used to tell the auction system to submit bids on your behalf in all rounds in which the price offer is greater than or equal to the amount entered for the proxy instruction. I'm going to stress a point now. I get this question a lot, so please pay attention. Proxy instructions have no impact on your price offers. If you choose to enter proxy instructions, the auction system will use those instructions to place bids for your station in accordance with those instructions. The auction system does not look at or use proxy instructions for any other purpose than to place bids in accordance with those instructions. If you choose to use proxy instructions, please note that proxy instructions can only be submitted for a station's currently held option. You can change or delete proxy instructions at any time during a round, and during a round, you can manually change a bid that was placed for you by the auction system according to those instructions. As a reminder, you should check regularly to make sure that your proxy instructions remain in effect, because as soon as the price offer for a station's currently held option drops below the proxy amount you have entered, the proxy instruction will no longer be in effect, and the auction system will not submit bids for that station anymore. A missing bid is a bid to drop out of the auction. It's sort of like if you are driving a car and you want to use cruise control. It can be there and make sure that you stay on the speed limit and everything's going right, but you still have to pay attention. You can't just take a nap. I want to go over the few highest level takeaway points from today's presentation. First, pay attention to the bidding schedule and the bidding status for your stations. I will say it again. A missing bid is a bid to drop out. Proxy instructions are a useful tool. Please feel free to use them, but you still need to pay attention to the price offers and bidding statuses. Likewise, while the decrement percentage of the base clock price is predictable, the decrement percentage for price offers for anything other than a UHF station bidding to go off the air will vary from round to round based on vacancy. Whether or not the auction system freezes a station depends solely on if it can find a feasible channel for that station in its pre-auction band. As long as a station could be needed to meet the clearing target and it has a feasible channel in its pre-auction band, the auction system will offer the station lower price offers and it will have the status bidding. And on that note, the vacancy ranges are helpful because they can provide you with a snapshot of the vacancy in a particular band, but they're only a snapshot of the vacancy as of the time they are calculated. As bidding progresses in the auction, the bids of other stations from round to round will change the vacancy. So while it does give you a good indication of how free or full the band is, keep in mind that just because there is a low vacancy range does not mean that if you place a bid to move into that other band, that it may not be able to be accommodated. And likewise, if there is a low vacancy in your station's pre-auction band, that does not guarantee that you will freeze. You do not freeze until the auction system can no longer find a feasible channel in your pre-auction band. So now Melissa is going to talk about the reverse auction bidding system.
Before I get started, I just want to emphasize a few things about some of the things that Erin talked about. We've been getting a lot of questions about vacancy. And so let me just, at a high level, talk to you about why we are providing you those numbers. This actually came out of discussions with bidders about what information would be available during the auction, and it was something that bidders asked to have so that they had some sense of what was happening outside of their world of their stations in their bidding. So we provided a vacancy index information. It is there for you as information. It's not required that you understand these numbers in order to bid. It simply gives you information about what's happening in your neighborhood for your stations. Is the band filling up? Is it not filling up? Are you likely to be getting close to being frozen or not? That's generally how it's meant to be used. If you have questions, please feel free to call us. We have staff trained to answer your questions. The slides that Erin went over today, we will make available in the tutorial as well as in these workshop slides. A little bit about the proxy also. It is, again, meant to just be an aid for you. You do not have to use the proxy. It's not required that you get concerned about what about this and what about that. If you don't want to use it, don't use it. If you would like to use it, it's there for you to use, and we are happy to help you with it and answer any of your questions. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the bidding system. And my goal today is to help you get comfortable with the bidding system that you'll be using during the clock phase of the auction. You've already had some exposure to it. During the initial commitments, you made your initial commitments using the reverse auction bidding system. It's a component of that system. If you have logged in during the preview period, then you've already seen the reverse auction bidding system. You've seen it in its state before the auction starts. What you have not seen yet is what the auction system is like when bidding is going on. So that's what I'm going to show you today. We have many resources available to you to train you on the bidding system and to be there as a resource during the clock phase. On the Auction 1001 website, under the Education tab, we have published a user guide. So this is a complete guide to using the bidding system during the clock phase. You can look up anything you have questions about in the software. It will be in the user guide. But of course, you can always call us on the auction bidder line if you have questions about how to use the software. Next, we have published a clock phase tutorial. And while this is more about the bidding procedures, it is presented in the context of the software. So you will see the My Results screen, and then the tutorial goes through what is all those columns on the My Results tab. What are they? How do they get determined? So it's really tying the bidding procedures to the bidding system. So please use the tutorial as a reference guide as well. And finally, we have today's workshop. We are recording this workshop, and we will make it available on the website soon. Let's talk about accessing the system. So I'm going to talk about accessing the auction system with the real data in it. So that's the one that you've been logging into for the preview period. That preview period will close at 6 p.m. tonight. Once it closes, we are going to close off access to the auction system until May 31st at 9 a.m., which is 1 hour before the first round of bidding begins. On May 31st at 9 a.m., when this system becomes available, you will see a link on the auction homepage, and you click on that link to log into the system. Authorized bidders log into the system using the same username, password, and PIN used during the initial commitment and the preview period. If you've not yet logged into the system, if you have more than one authorized bidders and one person has been logging in and now it's first time for you, you will have to go through the process of setting a PIN. There's information in the user guide about how to set your PIN for the first time. And if you have any problems logging in, you should contact technical support. That number was provided to you in your final confidential status letter. Once you log into the system, you will see on the far left the navigation bar. From the navigation bar, you can access the 7 screens in the bidding system. They are, first, the place bid screen. This is where you're going to place your bids, and if you want to, your proxy instructions. You can only place bids and proxy instructions during a bidding round. The bid summary screen is where you view a summary of the bids and the proxy instructions you placed in the most recent round, or you can navigate to a past round. On the My Results screen, you will view your results after bid processing of a round is complete. The download screen is where you download information about your stations, your bids, and your results. The auction schedule screen is where you can view the upcoming bidding schedule. The messages screen is where you can view announcements from the FCC and send messages to the FCC. And finally, the station info screen is where it contains the basic information about your stations in the auction. At any time, you can lock your screen or log out. The top bar appears on every screen, and it displays the name and FRN of the qualified bidder. It displays the current stage and round number, the current time in Eastern Time and the date, and a countdown timer. Before a round opens, the timer will show the time until the round opens. During the round, the timer shows the time until the round closes. When there's 5 minutes left in a round, the timer will turn red with a white background to warn you that the round is about to close. Now we'll look closer at each of the screens in the bidding system. Starting with the station info screen. It displays information about your qualified stations. The information on the screen does not change throughout the reverse auctions. It's just there as a reference for you. The relinquishment options that you selected on FCC Form 177 are displayed for your reference here on this page for each station. And if you have more than 4 stations, the screen will also include a filter that enables you to quickly find a specific station. On the messages screen, you may view announcements and send messages to the FCC. If you have any unread messages or announcements, you will see a message count notification next to the messages navigation link on the navigation bar as highlighted. Under the announcements section, you will see information about all the announcements that the FCC has sent. An announcement appears green until you have read it. Next to the information about the announcement is the title of the announcement and the first few lines of the announcement. You can view an entire announcement by clicking on the link. In this example, our announcement is very short, so there's not more to read, but with a longer announcement, this page would display the entire text of the announcement. Under the My Conversations section, you can view the messages that you have sent to the FCC and any replies from the FCC. To send a message, click on the Compose New Message button, enter a subject and the details of your message, and then click Send. Moving on to the My Results screen. So during the preview period, you can view your results from the initial commitment, as we've been talking about. The screen displays the following information for each of your qualified stations. In the first column is your bidding status. Next is the initial option that is assigned to your station as a result of the initial commitment. So we call it the initial option in stage 1. After that are the available options to your station based on what you selected on Form 177 and your initial option that has been assigned. In the next column is the initial vacancy. You'll notice that there's no number for go off air, as Aaron indicated. We have unlimited capacity in the go off air option, so we don't need a vacancy range there. And the last column is the clock prices for the next round. So in this case, round 1. You only see prices for the relinquishment options. There's no price for dropping off air. I mean, it's 0, but we didn't put that up there. Obviously, there's only price offers for the relinquishment options. Okay, on the download screen, you can download information from the system. Each file is available in either Microsoft Excel format or as a CSV file. The My Stations download includes the information that is shown on the station info screen. The My Results download includes cumulative information from the My Results screen, so all the rounds of results for you. And the My Bids file is not available until round 1 begins because it pertains to bidding. You can view the schedule for upcoming bidding rounds on the auction schedule screen. The screen displays the duration, the start and end time for scheduled rounds. The next event is highlighted in red. In this example, the next event is the start of round 1. And the screen also shows the clearing target and highest channel for the current stage. Finally, we come to the Place Bid screen. During the preview period and any time that a round is not open, you will not be able to place bids. The Place Bid screen instead displays a banner that the next round is not yet open. Remember, bids can only be placed when a round is open. Once a round is open, the Place Bid screen looks something like this. This is showing us a bidder with 1 station. You will use the Place Bid screen to submit bids for stations with the status bidding. There is a red warning message at the top of the screen to indicate that you have not submitted bids for all your stations. You will use the current round bid drop-down to select your bid for the round. By default, the drop-down displays the station's currently held option. So you can see in this example, the currently held option is go off air. And by default, the drop-down is showing the go off air for this round's price. You can select a different bid option by clicking on the drop-down menu. The options that are available depend on the relinquishment options you selected on Form 177, your currently held option, and the bidding hierarchy. For more information about what options will appear in the drop-down, please go to the tutorial. We have a section called Available Options in the Additional Details section of the tutorial. Once you have selected your current round bid for a station, you must click the Submit button to submit the bid to the auction system. The red exclamation indicates that the bid has not yet been submitted. Once a bid has been submitted, the auction system will display a green check mark indicating that the bid has been submitted. If you're bidding for multiple stations, you can select and submit for each station your bid one at a time. Or you can also select the bids for all your stations and then click the Submit All to submit all your bid selections at once. Clicking the Submit All button will submit the currently held option for each station if you do not first select a different option. So, if you wish to continue to bid for each station's currently held option in a round, all you need to do is come in and click that Submit All button. And you're done. You've submitted all your bids at the currently held option. It's only if you want to switch your currently held option to maybe one of the VHF options, or if you want to drop out of bidding, that you need to go into that drop-down. If you want to switch from your currently held option, bid to move to one of the VHF bands, for example, say you wanted to switch your currently held option from go off air, as we see in this example, to move to low VHF. Once you select that as your current round bid, the system will prompt you to select a fallback bid. You must select either to stay in your currently held option at this round's price offer. You can see in this example how the price offer in the fallback menu for go off air is less than the price for the bidder's currently held option to go off air. Option 1 is stay in your currently held option at this round's price offer, or the other option for a fallback bid is to drop out of bidding. So more information about fallback bids and when they might get processed is also available on the tutorial. After you've made your selection, click Submit to submit your bid to the auction system. The system warns you if you've not submitted bids for some or all of your stations. In this example, the bidder has 3 stations with status bidding that have unsubmitted bids for the round. You can use the Submit All button, as we just discussed, to submit the currently held option as the current round bid for all remaining stations with unsubmitted bids. Or you can, of course, select a different bid option from the drop-down menu for those stations and then submit the bids. In this example, I will submit the currently held option at this round's price offers for the remaining stations, so I'm just going to click on the Submit All button. And then the system indicates the bids have been submitted for all stations. You can view your submitted bids using the bid summary screen. It also displays, it will display all bids and the fallback options, if applicable, submitted in the round. It indicates also who placed the bid and at what time the bid was placed and the date. You can use the print icon to print the page, and you can also view the bid summary for previous rounds by clicking on the drop-down list. Finally, another option is you can download your bids by clicking one of the icons next to the My Bids download. So the My Bids file includes the bids that you place for the current and past rounds. It's cumulative. There are many ways to verify your bids. You get the green check mark on the Place Bids screen and the green message when all your bids have been placed. That's Place Bids. On the bid summary screen, you view the bids that you've placed, and you can just verify that that is indeed what you intended to bid. And finally, you can go to the Downloads screen, and you can download the My Bids file, go to the current round, and verify, yep, that's what I intended to bid. Lots of ways to verify your bids. Okay, what if you submitted a bid and then you change your mind, you want to submit a different bid, and the round is still open? Well, you can change your bid for a station by clicking on the Change button for that station on the Place Bids screen. To change your bid, select a different option from the drop-down menu. So in this station that we've been bidding for in this example, let's say we're going to go back to the currently held option of Go Off Air. After changing your current round bid, you must submit your bid. You must submit your changes by clicking on the Submit button. If you don't submit your changes, then the system will use the bid that you had submitted previously. So you have to submit your changes in order for that to overwrite what you have already submitted. Remember that bids must be submitted before the round ends. That includes any changes to bids. It has to be submitted before the round ends. When a round closes, the system will process the bids of all the bidders. In this example, you can see that round 1 has closed, and there's quite a bit of time before round 2 begins. While the bids are being processed, a message on the top of the My Results screen will indicate the bid processing is in progress. Until bid processing is complete, the results displayed on the screen will be for the previous round. Here you can see that the results for the initial commitment are displayed until the results for round 1 are posted. When the results are ready, a pop-up message will ask you to update the screen, as you see here. As applicable, for your stations, the My Results screen shows the following information. It'll always show the status for each station. If you bid for that station in the previous round, it will remind you what you bid in the previous round, and then it will tell you what your option is after bid processing, so what your currently held option is based on processing. It'll show your available options for the next round, the associated vacancy ranges, and the clock prices for the next round. You can use the drop-down to see results from previous rounds or the initial option as well. Again, you can find more information about what each of these columns are and how they're determined on the online tutorial. You can also download your results from the download screen. As with the My Bids file, the My Results file includes data for all past rounds as well as the current round. All right, now we'll talk about proxy instructions. If you choose to enter a proxy instruction, let's make sure you know how to do that. If you are bidding to stay in your currently held option, you can also enter a proxy instruction by clicking on the link that shows up below the current round bid dropdown. After clicking on the link, enter your proxy amount in the box, and then click Submit to submit the bid and the proxy instruction. You're simultaneously submitting your bid and your proxy instruction. You can change or delete the proxy instruction by clicking on the change, just like you do with changing your bid. Your proxy instructions are displayed on the bid summary screen along with your bids. In this example, with these 4 stations, proxy instructions have been placed for all of the bidder stations. but you can submit proxy instructions for just some of your stations if you want, or none at all. When the next round starts, you can see that the place bid screen, that the system has already submitted bids for all stations with proxy instructions in effect. While the round is open, you can change or delete any of these bids using the change button for the station. And the bid summary screen also confirms the bids have been placed by a proxy agent for the stations. Now let's move forward in this example about proxy bidding to the results for round 4. The bidding status for station WHSN has changed to frozen, currently infeasible. However, we see that the proxy instructions for that station still remain because the station could become unfrozen later in the stage. You can find out more information about the various bidding statuses in the online tutorial. Suppose that the bidder wants to change one of its proxy instructions in the next round. And also, let's say the bidder wants to submit a bid different than the bid submitted by a proxy for another station. I'm going to show you how that is done. To change a proxy instruction, click on Change for the relevant station on the Place Bid screen, then enter the new price for the proxy instruction. So this is if you want to update your proxy instruction to a different amount. Then you click on the Submit button to submit the change. And note that this can also be done for frozen, currently infeasible stations. So bidding, frozen, currently infeasible stations are the stations that you can submit proxy instructions for. There's an additional status in an additional stage. If we go to stage 2 or stage 3, the proxy instructions also apply. As always, you need to submit any changes to your proxy instruction before the round closes. If you want to submit a bid for a station that is different from the bid submitted by the proxy agent, you can do that by using the following steps. Click on the change for the relevant station on the Place Bid screen. Delete the proxy instruction. Select the new bid from the drop-down. And then submit the bid before the round closes. You can use the My Results screen to determine whether your proxy instructions will be in effect for the next round. If the next round clock price for your currently held options, shown in the last column, is below the proxy amount, shown in the third column, below your bid from the last round, then the instruction has expired and is no longer in effect. So again, if the price on the far right, which is your clock price, has dropped below your proxy bid amount, then the proxy instruction has expired. One reminder, remember, if it's expired, the bidder will need to bid in the next round if the bidder wants to be able to continue bidding for that station in future rounds. For a station that had the status bidding in the last round and continues to have the status in this round, the screen will provide a warning that your proxy instructions are no longer applicable. Hovering over the question mark icon displays the warning. For more details and examples of proxy bidding, please view the section about proxy bidding in the online tutorial. Now let's talk about what happens when one of your stations becomes provisionally winning during the clock phase. The My Results screen will provide an indication when a station's status has changed from the previous round, whether it's changing from bidding to frozen, currently infeasible, or changing to frozen, provisionally winning, or changing to exited, not needed. Whenever your station status changes, you will see this message at the top of your My Results screen, and it says that you have details to view about one or more of your stations. So in this example, we see the blue question mark icon is next to station WBOB. Its status has changed to frozen, provisionally winning after bid processing of the selected round. Hovering over the icon reveals details about the change. In this example, we can also see that WHSN was frozen, provisionally winning in an earlier round. I know that because there's no question mark icon next to that station. So its status did not just change in this round. It was frozen, provisionally winning in a previous round. The My Results page also displays your provisionally winning compensation as of the selected round. This amount is calculated as the sum of the compensation of all your frozen, provisionally winning stations. In this example, the bidder has 2 frozen, provisionally winning stations, so its provisionally winning compensation is the sum of the compensations associated with the currently held options of those 2 stations. When all of your stations have either exited the auction or become provisionally winning, you no longer need to bid for the remainder of the stage, as is shown here for a bidder with 1 station. If bidding has ended for you for the current stage, the Place Bid screen will not be functional even when a round is open. but you may continue to log in and monitor the auction or download your files. When bidding ends for all bidders, the stage will conclude, and the system will indicate that bidding has concluded on the top bar in place of the countdown timer. The My Results screen for the last round of the stage displays the status for each of your stations at the conclusion of the stage, as well as your provisionally winning compensation for the stage. We recommend that you download all files after the reverse auction has concluded for a stage and take printouts of any screens that you wish to keep, because we will close off access to the auction system once the reverse auction bidding has concluded for a stage. So we'll give you a little bit of time. We'll say the stage is concluded, give you some time to download your files, make any printouts you want, and then we will close off access until either we go into another stage or we're done, the auction's over. Before we take a break, I'm going to really quickly tell you about one other system that is going to be available to you during the incentive auction. It is the incentive auction public reporting system. Beginning May 27th, that's this Friday, and continuing throughout the incentive auction, the public can access an incentive auction public reporting system. We call it the PRS for short. The PRS has three primary functions. First, it has a dashboard which allows the public to monitor the status of the incentive auction. It also has announcements that allow the public to view announcements from the auction system that have been made public. And finally, it has a forward auction product status. So this provides information about the products, which are the generic spectrum blocks that are for sale in the forward auction, what the status of those are round by round, including things like the current price, what the demand is for those products. One thing, I'm not going to go into in this presentation much about anything but the dashboard, because I think it's the most relevant to the reverse auction bidders. We will provide a user guide for the PRS on the auction system, on the Auction 1000 website. And like I said, we're just going to provide an overview of the dashboard and a reminder that the data in this presentation is for illustrative purposes only, and in no way represents predictions on the part of the FCC regarding the outcome of the incentive auction. During stage one of the reverse auction, the dashboard will display the stage number, an overall status of the incentive auction. In this case, we're showing it during the stage one of the reverse auction, so the status says that we're in the reverse auction clock phase of stage one. It displays the clearing target and licensed spectrum amount for the current stage. In the reverse auction status box, it shows the current round number in the reverse auction. In the forward auction status box, it shows the status of the forward auction. Well, in this case, since we're in stage one of the reverse auction, it says that bidding has not yet started. The upcoming bidding schedule in the reverse auction is displayed. It will be the same schedule displayed to bidders when they are logged into the auction system. So you can use the public reporting system as a quick way to view the upcoming bidding schedule. When the reverse auction has concluded for a stage, the dashboard will display the total clearing cost. During stage one of the forward auction clock phase, the dashboard will display the current auction status. Since we've moved on in this example to the forward auction, the status now displays that stage one of the forward auction is in progress. It will continue to display the status of the reverse auction, which in this case, if we're in the forward auction, bidding has concluded in the reverse auction, and the clearing costs are displayed. The status of the forward auction displays the current round and the auction proceeds as of the last round. As was shown during the reverse auction, during the forward auction clock phase, the upcoming bidding schedule in the forward auction is displayed. And finally, we see the progress towards meeting the final stage rule. The graphic displaying the progress towards meeting the final stage rule in the forward clock auction includes a box indicating whether the first component of the final stage rule has been met, a box indicating whether the second component has been met, and a box that indicates the overall status of meeting the final stage rule. That is, if it has been met or not met. Note that each of the two components must be met in order for the final stage rule to be satisfied. The box for each component displays the target amount needed to satisfy that component and the actual or estimated amount as of the last round of the forward clock auction. When a component is met, the status box turns green, and when both components are met, the overall status box turns green and the actual and estimated amounts are no longer reported. So we hope that you will use this public reporting system to monitor what is happening in the forward auction, especially as it pertains to the final stage rule being met.
Cores, the FCC's FRN registration system is being updated. So reverse auction winning bidders and broadcasters that may be receiving money for reimbursement costs will be using the updated cores to facilitate the post-auction payment process. And so therefore you will be needing to use this updated version. To transition an FRN to the news core system, a user must log in to the new system and configure their account. The new cores is right now in a limited pilot, but broadcasters will be added to the pilot sometimes this summer after the reverse auction. And the FCC will be reaching out with more information at that time, but do be on the lookout for this information and any training materials related to the launch of the new cores. I'm now going to briefly discuss the transition to a new stage of the auction, should one be necessary. So this graphic that you're seeing on the screen is sort of a basic flow of how the incentive auction works. So as a reminder, each stage of the auction is for a particular clearing target. This first stage is a clearing target of 126 megahertz. The reverse auction clock phase starts May 31st. When bidding in the reverse auction clock phase concludes, the forward auction for stage 1 will start. And as the forward auction goes on, we'll be looking to see whether or not that final stage rule is met during the forward auction. And as you can see from this graphic, if it were to be met, then we would do the final TV channel assignments and the forward auction assignments. But if it's not met, that's when you go to a new stage. So that's what we're going to talk about now, is if it's not met. In a new stage, the clearing target will generally be the next lowest clearing target of the 600 megahertz band plan that the Commission adopted. Each lower clearing target adds one or more channels to the TV band. So you can see here, the one we're starting with at a clearing target of 126 megahertz, the highest possible channel is channel 29. If the auction system moves to a clearing target of, say, 114, which would be the next lowest, then the highest physical channel in the TV band would then be 31. Adding channels into the TV band means that in order to meet the new clearing target in this subsequent stage of the reverse auction, the auction system will not need to buy as many stations as it needed to meet the clearing target in the previous stage. Again, we're adding channels to the band, which means that we have more room to repack stations, so we don't have to buy as many. So as Melissa went over in her presentation, and we got a couple questions on this as we were going through the questions during the break, is how do you track whether or not the forward auction is going to meet the final stage rule? And you do that based using that public reporting system that she went over. And she showed you the graphics where you can see on that dashboard, you'll be able to track whether or not those little boxes turn green. If those boxes all turn green, then you'll know that it is the final stage and there won't need to be another reverse auction. But if the forward auction concludes and we have not met it, and you'll be able to see that on that public reporting system page, then we'll move on to a new stage. And more information about that public reporting system will become available, how to access it, and all of those things in the coming week. And as a reminder, if the auction does proceed to a subsequent stage, we will be providing you with additional information and any additional training that you may need to participate in the new stage. Only bidders that had one or more station with the status of frozen provisionally winning at the end of the previous stage will be able to log into the system for the new stage. Stations that exited the auction in the previous stage, whether voluntarily or because they were determined to be not needed, will continue to have that status of exited in the new stage. So bidding in the new stage only pertains to stations that were frozen provisionally winning in the previous stage. And for any bidder that has no stations that were provisionally winning in the previous stage, they won't access the second stage because once exited, you're not participating in the auction anymore. So it's only, again, for bidders that have stations that were frozen provisionally winning. And in a new stage, the functionality of the auction system is basically the same as it was in the first stage. One of the things that will be different, of course, is the clearing target. So on the auction schedule screen, you would see the new clearing target with the new highest channel, and you'd see the schedules for stage 2. Again, these are illustrative schedules, so don't think that that's actually what the second stage would be if we had one. And also, there will be a preview period before round 1 of the new stage. So just like this one where you got to log in and be reminded of everything and see everything, we'll do the same thing again, where you can get in and see the information before the stage starts. The functionality of the screens in the system is basically the same, but some of the data does not carry over from the previous stage, which is important for you to know, as Melissa was talking about printing off your bids and that sort of thing. For example, the download files in a new stage only contain data for the current stage. However, there will be a link that will enable you to access the auction system from the previous stage to get to that information, but it may be easier if you just go ahead and have it already downloaded, especially good practice to do at the end of the first stage.